Sophie was very determined to take possession of a handsome and promising man. There were rumours that he would soon take a high position. 2 sons and a charming daughter. These innocent words caused not the most pleasant emotions in Sophie. She heard her boyfriend call his children that. Yes, Mark was the father of 3 children. In addition, he was a loving father, proud of his offspring, and he was never going to leave his family. It was he who immediately informed Sophie when they started contacting, and thus marked their boundaries. Sophie was so turned on by this that she really wanted to win over this attractive and promising man. There were rumours that he would soon take one of the high positions. Let him be her lover first. And when he sees what a wonderful woman she is, a mistress, a hostess, and a mother, yes, a mother, he will definitely leave his wife and come to her. Moreover, his children have already grown up. His eldest daughter got married only a month ago. And you ask, did she really need a father? Mark was careful and used personal protective equipment, which used to be called product number 4 and which was prohibited. He had enough to take care of his 3 children. Why multiply poverty elsewhere? He had money, but his salary was limited. And children have now become very expensive, if, of course, they are given due attention. You couldn't leave them like peas by the road. Mark was a very responsible man, and he always acted with caution and reason. He had a strong character, and he did not fall into compromising connections. He also maintained friendly relations with his colleagues. There was always an inner nobility in him, with a little grey hair, a proud chin, and bearing. It all started when he invited a girl who was clearly bored at a corporate event to dance, and without much thought, the gentleman decided to entertain this bored girl who seemed to be a grey mouse. But for some reason, she interpreted it for herself as a manifestation of interest. She likes him. Not that he was hostile to her, otherwise the dance would not have taken place. He even found her somewhat attractive. But it was just that. During the dance, the man thought about the need to fix the roof at the dacha, as well as to help his daughter, who is already married, to raise money for the first instalment on the mortgage. In fact, he didn't really want to go to a corporate event. But he was hinted that if he wanted to get a promotion, he needed to develop a corporate spirit and develop a team strategy. Otherwise, he would not be able to count on a promotion. His boss was the most adherent of corporate ethics with badges, and all other attributes. The dance ended, but Sophie grabbed his hand and didn't let go, leading him back to the table. She began to spread another gossip, of which there were a dime a dozen in the office. Mark listened with moderate interest, adhering to the Japanese technique as coaches and gurus strongly advised, sometimes interjecting phrases such as, "Yes, really? Is it true?" and "interesting," to show that he was listening attentively. At that time, his thoughts swirled about where to get the money for the down payment. Even without gossip, his head was full of problems. And so it came to pass that they spent the whole evening dancing, and he, as a decent man, had to escort Sophie home. He did not have a car that day, as an alcoholic board game was planned for the evening. And they decided to walk. But then they stood at the entrance for a long time. Sophie continued to talk non-stop. Her dear gaze clearly said, "Kiss me everywhere, I'm about to be 30 years old." He just wanted to take a hot shower and go to bed, as he was already frozen in the wind. And so Sophie suggested, maybe we should have some tea? And he agreed. How many times will he scold himself after this decision? The tea turned out to be delicious, and the buns that the girl's mother baked with her own hands were really delicious. They lived only the 2 of them, without Dad for a long time. This modest girl, looking at him with such adoration, somehow attracted his attention, and he realised that he hadn't noticed it before. Unexpectedly for himself, saying goodbye, Mark took her phone number and promised, "I'll call." "Tomorrow?" asked Sophie hopefully. "The day after tomorrow," he promised. And they decided to stop there. In the evening, as he fell asleep in his wife's arms, he was no longer thinking about the mortgage and the roof, but about this elusive Sophie that no one seemed to have noticed yet. Sophie, Sophie, get out of the house. And he decided that fate was destined to become his Magellan, and open up new lands and sensations for her. Well, and a little for myself, of course. And Sophie could not sleep either. She had long been in love with her handsome colleague, and now her dream began to come true. Therefore, she spent the night in dreams and hopes. He promised to call, and he did call. They left the office together, and he drove her to her house. And there, in the car, they began to kiss, observing all precautions since the car was parked in the neighbouring yard. They were careful that no one would see. It turned out that the grey mouse Sophie can kiss quite well. She invited him to get up. She said that his mother had gone to her sister, and that she would prepare tea herself and treat him to buns, which were baked in advance by an elderly relative. She knew in advance. And after that, they had. And so the gentleman also unexpectedly liked it. She turned out to be not as grey as he thought. Apparently, she had good teachers, or at least some experience. This was a little embarrassing for Marker. He expected to be, if not the first, then at least the second. But in the end, everything was fine. "When will you come to us?" asked Sophie before saying goodbye. "I'm not just going to call you, I'm going to call you." She was already sure. Everything in her head was like a puzzle. He realised that he liked everything, especially the fact that he was treated to very tasty stuffed peppers, which his wife did not cook. And he suggested, "Let's do it tomorrow." "Come on." Sophie, who got her love, easily agreed. She could not be called a beauty in the usual sense of the word, but she could say about herself the same thing as a famous actress. "I have never been beautiful, but I have always been very nice." By that time, Sophie had already unsuccessfully married, however, without children. But now she was approaching 30, and her mother demanded grandchildren, "At least from someone. I probably won't be able to find a husband." My mother said realistically, "I don't want a child from someone random." Sophie stubbornly answered, "Well, where can you find someone you want, daughter?" My mother rightly asked, "You want smart and beauty, but they choose the same mate." "We will find it. Yes, the same, but with mother of pearl buttons." Sophie diverted the conversation, and then a smart and handsome Mark appeared in their house. Yes, he had been married for a long time, and he did not hide it, and my mother was glad. She really liked her daughter's choice. And, besides, he turned out to be very decent, ready to get married. All that remains is to give birth, and their children should be beautiful, beautiful from their father and smart from their mother. Sophie assessed the situation and was critical. It's a pity that such women are not so valued now. And while the couple was having dinner in the kitchen, the cunning mother secretly pierced several holes in the gentleman's purse with a needle, as she used to string beads. They agreed to it, and the sperm needed small holes to reach the goal. Only one of them was needed for this. And he, so cruel, eventually penetrated through a tiny hole and fertilized the egg. The test showed 2 stripes, and our heroine turned out to be pregnant. Mark was amazed. How could this happen? After all, he took all possible measures. But Sophie looked at him with dear eyes full of sincerity. It was probably the fault of the quality control inspectors. What a mess at work now. And the man agreed to recognise the child. Abortion was unacceptable. In addition, Sophie's mother really wanted grandchildren. But Mark refused to marry. He already had a wife he loved. Yes, he did. But he was sensible and didn't tell Sophie about his love. Mark avoided discussing these feelings. He developed a complex bond with Sophie, a kind of painful attachment, and, of course, sympathy. And, of course, there was a sexual instinct. Time passed, and in time Sophie gave birth to a cute baby, a copy of Marker. He came to the discharge, as expected, with flowers and balloons, but refused to be photographed. At home, everything turned around Harry. Happy parents. The daughter's roommate, as an embarrassing name, helped financially as much as he could. He was promoted at work. But Mark didn't tell his wife about it, as all the money would have gone to the family. Little Harry was their joy, and at this time the potential mother-in-law began to express her claims. "Why don't you, Daddy, spend time with the child like other fathers? We're the only ones here and you just come, show the child the goat and leave? No, dear, join us. You can help around the house. You can't tear off a finger." Mark has lost a lot of weight and exhaustion in order to provide this magnificent four. It took a lot of money to prosper, and they weren't going to pay it in vain. In addition, they had a lot to do. The roof had not yet been repaired, and the money for the down payment had not yet been raised. When will it all end? Always in labour like a bee. And, exhausted from such unexpected happiness, the man began to appear in the Sophie house less and less often. He began to transfer money to her card, as it was convenient. The young mother to whom he was leaving began to suffer, and when their son was 1.5 years old, and he did not even come to congratulate, she came with the child to Mark in his apartment. It was a day off, and the happiness of the wife and children, the daughter lived separately, knew no bounds. And then a woman with the eyes of a deer, such women can be treacherous, showed her strength, demanding more content. But Mark, who didn't care anymore, advised her to apply for alimony, as it would be much lower than the amount he was transferring. In addition, he had already confessed to his wife, and she forgave him. "Yes," she cried, "but she forgave me." He told Sophie all this and said that she could go to hell, since she had nothing to do here. And he carefully, but firmly, kicked her out with the child. Go to kindergarten or go to court. This is not what she expected from her love. He had so cruelly destroyed her feelings and ignored her soul. Mark suddenly turned out to be very cunning. At this time, my grandmother retired after a long job, and she agreed to help with her beloved grandson, allowing her daughter to return to work, and Sophie gladly accepted it. At this time, it was revealed that Mark had recently moved to another department to keep his distance, and in his place there is a new employee, Dennis, an interesting and attractive man in middle years. This is how he imagined herself as Sophie, beautiful and out of maternity leave. And he even kissed her hand. Therefore, all these problems with the previous beau faded into the background. Moreover, Mark continued to transfer money, and the handsome Dennis took a high position, which was held by the unpleasant Mark before him. And according to rumours, Denise did not have children,